start recording now.
Wicked. All right, perfect. Thank you, Jenny. Welcome everyone to the final part 4 of the Performance Nutrition Seminar Series. So this is mainly adopting to a bit of a Q&A approach. So I've had some questions sent over and I will do my best to address them. Before we get into it, I will kind of acknowledge that there are nuances. There's a lot of individualization around sports nutrition, and without just blagging it and saying it depends on X, Y, and Z, I will try and talk through the different scenarios and the different factors that affect the information that I'm given, but very much try and put it in a way that you can kind of take some messages home and start implementing some things. The final slide will have my contact details on it as always. So if you're watching this on catch up and there's kind of anything you want any extra clarity on, or you've got more questions that come through, please by all means get in touch. I'm more than happy to address those. I'll kind of also right at the end talk through some of the services that I can offer past these sessions. The first thing I'm going to talk about is iron. Try not to hang too slowly in my delivery today. Don't worry too much about the content on this slide. It's just there, again, if you want to pause it and have a read through, but just highlighting the importance of iron. And I think most of us will have heard of iron at some point. I know for myself, it was when I was a child, I was deficient. And it's quite common in a couple population groups, a few of which you'll all adhere to. So the first one, athletes will have increased demand of iron. And particularly female athletes also have an increased demand of iron. So some of you in the call will have it twofold. So the function of iron, kind of at its primary level, is the delivery of oxygen around the body. So it forms part of the red blood cells. Red blood cells obviously circulate around your bloodstream and deliver oxygen to your working muscles. That's why one of the common signs of deficiency or insufficiency is going to be fatigue. Now, if you experience fatigue, there are obviously a lot of factors that it could be. It's a multifaceted problem, and you've got to go through, is my training workload right? Because fatigue could be that you're overtraining. Is your sleep to a good amount and good quality? Are you dealing with stress well? Are you consuming enough energy? Because obviously, if you're putting yourself in a massive deficit consistently, you're going to start feeling tired and fatigued. If you're going through that checklist and it's like, it's not these things, one of the things that could be is iron. Now, the easiest thing is to obviously go and get yourself tested. But the other thing you can do is to keep a bit of a food log and start looking at the iron content of the foods that you're having. So if you're a female athlete, particularly if you're going through a menstrual cycle, you will have increased needs for iron due to the blood loss. And athletes will have an increased demand for iron because of the higher turnover of red blood cells and the increase in kind of oxygen carrying capacity of your blood. So one other thing that I'll highlight here, if anyone does a lot of running, like road running, treadmill running, there is what we call foot strike hemolysis. So a bit of a fancy word, but as you're running, the impact can cause damage to some of these red blood cells, which means that you've got to turn these over and create new ones. So another group of people that will need even more iron are those that are engaging in a lot of endurance activities that have got impacts, such as road running. It's not inherently a bad thing. It's just that you need to be aware of the foods that contain iron and ensure that you're integrating them into your diet. Now, there's some recommendations up there on the top right. You'll see these varies. And again, in athletes, these might be upwards of 20 to 25 milligrams. And the group that's not listed there is once you're a female athlete age 50 and above, you fall back to the 8 milligrams per day. So you can track that, you can check that, but I think the easiest thing is to just look at your food on a weekly basis and see if you can identify the sources of iron. 2 types of iron that we touch on. First one is heme, second one is non-heme. Doesn't really matter what those things mean, but the difference is where we find them in the absorption rate. So the next slide will show the absorption rate in a bit more of a visual manner, so you might be able to connect with what I'm saying here. But your heme iron sources will have a certain amount of iron, but we can actually absorb and utilize more of that versus the non-heme source. And you might be able to identify there. The key difference is your kind of animal products versus your plant products. So again, looking at your diet, if you're consuming some meat, are you having some fish, some lean meat in there? Are you having some red meat? They're going to be quite high in iron. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, it's not to say that you can't get the right amount of iron. You absolutely can, but again, just got to be looking at where are these sources coming from. And the key ones tend to be green leafy vegetables. So the tips for raising iron is obviously to identify some of the foods on this slide and some of the foods coming on the next slide, and incorporate as many of these as you can. But another little tip I'll throw out there is that you can combine vitamin C with your iron intake to enhance it. So putting it in practical terms, if you take those green leafy vegetables, you might be making a salad and you want to enhance the absorption of that iron. So you fire in some vitamin C foods like some oranges, some peppers, tomatoes, or it might be that you just have a glass of orange juice on the side. So you're just combining those nutrients and they help with the absorption of one another. So there's a little tip. And the absorption is what I'm talking about on this slide here. So if we get the laser pointer up, you'll see this pinch from You Can Drop. But on the left-hand side, you've got the amount of iron that you can find in the food source listed on the left here per 100 grams. So you'll see the animal one's in purple and the plant one's in red. Now, the amount of iron is obviously variable depending upon the food. But when you come to the right-hand side, this graph here is how much of the iron your body will actually absorb and utilize. And you'll see that the purple ones are sticking out a lot more now. So all that's showing is that the animal sources, you will be able to utilize more of the iron from that food, whereas the bioavailability in the plant-based sources is lower. Again, my practical take home really on this is to just identify as many of these sources in your diet and include as many as you can. Pair it with a bit of vitamin C and you'll be okay. If you're finding that fatigue on a daily basis is problematic, there are a lot of things it could be, but iron is often one of the ones that underpins it. So it's quite simple to make some changes, but if needed, get in touch with your GP and you can go through that. I've just got a message in the chat that I will check. That's the amount eaten. So yeah, if you look to consume that amount, you'll likely have the right amount availability wise. So on to the next question is probably the most common situation that I think people fall into, particularly in a weight loss regime. And I think it's one of the things that takes people's legs out from underneath them is being in this situation where I'm eating however many calories, but you're not losing weight. And most often this is I'm eating 800 calories, but I'm not losing the weight, or I'm eating 1200 calories. So it's the belief often that you're in a deficit and you're not losing the weight. And I think this then leads into the spiral of what I see of I need to go to Slimming World, I need to use fat burners, I need to do some liver detox, whatever the hell that actually means. So I'm going to address this as the process of what's actually going on here. And it might be a bit of a hard truth. And I get that it's a frustrating situation to be in, but I think it's one that you've got to be pragmatic and you've got to be logical and just work through the situation. And again, it's a bit of a checklist to just see what's going on. And I've been there myself. It is frustrating. So the first thing that you need to do in any sort of weight loss, weight making paradigm is to kind of calculate how much energy you need to then ensure that you put yourself in a deficit. Now, I'm going to talk you through how we do this and how the apps do it, the calculators do it, how I do it. I'd like to sit here and say I'm better than the calculator, but it's all an estimate. So the first thing we do is we take certain measures, might be usually height, weight, and age, but it might be a measure of lean body mass or body fat in there. We use that to then run predictive equations to estimate what your BMR is. And remember, BMR, this is from session 1, this graph you see, but the BMR is just how many calories you need at rest. So to start with, we're just estimating how many calories you need at rest. From here, we will then multiply this number to account for the energy that you're using through digesting and using food, your day-to-day activities, and your planned physical activity. Now, for some of you athletes that are also working on the yard and have got goodness knows what other life activity going on, maybe children, pets, all of those things that tie into it, you've probably got quite high activity outputs. And again, we just estimate this, whether it's through a calculator of you inputting how much energy you think you use, or whether you're working with a practitioner like myself and we sit down and figure out what a day-to-day looks like for you. So we then multiply it by a number and we end up with this calorie output. At the end of the day, this is just an estimate. So if your estimate comes out at 2,200, it's an estimate. It might be 200 calories over, it might be 200 calories under. So first of all, you've just got to appreciate that's there. And then we fine tune around that. But going a step beyond that, where I think a lot of clients sit of, I'm eating 1,000 calories, I'm eating 1,200 calories, that would absolutely put you in a deficit, and probably an unsustainable one that you shouldn't be doing anyway. But if you think you're eating that much and you're not losing weight, there's probably something else going on. So first of all, the amount that you need is an estimate. It's not the holy grail, and we've got to fine tune amongst it. The second thing is that if you've then gone and calculated how many calories you're consuming, i.e., let's say you think you're having 1,200 calories, you've probably done that through MyFitnessPal or an equivalent app that's out there, or you might have gone old school and kept a food record for 3 to 4 days and then used books to estimate what's in there. But again, it's an estimation. So just on the tracking element and inputting it into an app, there's a few errors, which I'll just quickly pull them all up here. It might be that if you're on MyFitnessPal, you've got to use a substitute food, so the actual food isn't there. It might be that the serving size has been difficult to standardize. Information on nutrients and foods is not complete. These databases that we have are not complete. Again, this seems really stupid, but a potato from America might be different to a potato from Spain. But obviously, when we use these apps, it's just a standard potato. I know that seems bizarre, but there's variations in things from different countries. And the other thing is that the data are only estimates of nutrient composition. And one thing that might shock people here is even just following food labels can be up to 20% off of what is actually in there. Now, we'd like to think usually they're a lot closer to the real number, but there's even errors in the food labeling. So there's lots of little errors that can add up just in the putting it into a food diary, into an app. You might use 2 apps, and one of them might tell you you're having 1,600 calories and the other one might be having 1,800 calories. Again, I'm not saying tracking's useless. Tracking can be a very useful tool, but you just need to be aware of some of the errors. So the other errors that we see are around self-recording. So if you're doing it for yourself, whether that's you might keep a food diary and pass it on to your nutritionist, you might log it yourself and analyze it yourself, you might use one of the apps. What we commonly see, and people often don't like to admit this, but it happens, and it's been documented in research a lot, is that, for example, if I was asked you to record everything that you're having for the next 3 days, the vast majority of people will begin altering their food patterns and what they're eating, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, across those 3 to 4 days. So it might not actually represent holistically what's going on a week-to-week basis. The other thing might just be that you make errors when recording, and you might make errors quantifying things. So for example, if you were to make a bolognese but it serves 4, when you're trying to quantify your portion with all the individual elements, it's going to be really difficult. So again, they're estimations, but just to put this into perspective, there's been a lot of review papers in this area, and one from 2009 found that 30% of people that self-recorded their nutritional intakes significantly underreported what they were having, and the average underreporting was about 15%. So 15% of the calories on average were kind of missed out through error of them recording and putting it into the app versus what they were actually having. So the hard truth on the original question, now we've gone through the process, is if you think you're in this situation, you're probably not. Now, you might be on a Monday, you might be on a Wednesday, but if we take the week holistically, are you in the deficit throughout the week? Are you actually having this number that you think you're having, or are there some errors that you need to feed into it? And is there some stuff subconsciously that's going on that you haven't been able to check yourself on just yet? So there's lots going on here, but whilst it's frustrating, stick with the process. If you haven't lost weight in the first 2 or 3 weeks, that doesn't mean you're never going to lose weight. You just got to stick with it. and just keep trying to be as self-aware and reflective as you can. It's not a process to beat yourself up. I always have that kind of vision of it's not a tightrope. Make it a wide track so you can vary. Get the week-to-week rolling tally, the week-to-week progress going, and you will punch through this. But the reality is there's no starvation mode or anything that's going on that's stopping you losing weight. If anyone has any questions on those bits, I will have time at the end, but please feel free to use the chat function. So next question ties in with one that I'm going to address at the end, but is breakfasts when you're in a hurry or on the go, breakfasts when you're not really hungry or not a breakfast person. And similarly in that, there was a question around don't really like breakfast and then having a large lunch kind of kills energy levels. And these are really, really common. I think it's important to normalize that. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of breakfast is the most important meal of the day, because the reality is all breakfast means is the first thing that you eat. So whether you eat it at 7 a.m. or 11 a.m. or 1 p.m., it's still the first meal. What I do think is it's good where possible to try and get some energy in before training, before work, before yard work, if you can. This is where the bit that I don't want to fob off, but I am going to acknowledge as individualization. I've worked with a lot of athletes that won't have a meal immediately because it doesn't sit well. And they might go and train for an hour or two first thing in the morning. And for them, it works well. So here's a few ideas of breakfasts for when you've not got a lot of time or you're just on the go. So yogurt pots, smoothie bowls, overnight oats, cereals, particularly kind of whole grain stuff, muesli, Weetabix can all be a great option. You've got things in there like some of your pastries, your bagels, croissants. They're including carbohydrates in those foods, so they're not inherently bad, again, despite what you might see. And there are some kind of, don't want to call them fast foods, but they kind of are, like you see the Oats So Simple pot there, where you just pour some hot water in it for 2 minutes and you're good to go. It's not a case of being perfect. It's a case of just ensuring that you're fueling. And all of these foods that you see here and any other things that you might be thinking of at the moment can be really good. And the final one you see there, the NutriBullet, I think smoothies are brilliant, particularly at this time of the year where, despite it raining outside, we're coming into summer. Appetite might be changing. You might be kind of wanting some more seasonal fruits. I think that's a great way to get them in. You can get your protein, you can get your carbs in, but acknowledging if you don't want breakfast, don't look at it as I have to have a meal. Can it be a snack? Can it just be a piece of fruit? Could it even be that you switch up your morning glass of water for a morning glass of orange juice? Just get something in. Might help you. Again, it's individualized. If you go morning without eating and you start your regime at lunch, it's not the end of the world. So you've got to find what works for you, what works for your schedule, but hopefully there's some practical examples there that can give you some ideas. So where I'm just going into a bit of a quick fire mode, but there's quite a few questions I want to get to. But the next one is around protein powders. So I think the question that came through on this one was protein powders that don't give a bad tummy or taste like grit. Again, tasting like grit is a individualized thing, but I know what you mean. I've tried quite a few. I am not sponsored by any of these. So this isn't from a place of bias as far as a lot of my athletes have these brands. I've had them myself. I like them. I think they're quite high quality. You've got Nutrition X, Optimum Nutrition, and My Protein. These are kind of the spaces that I would lean towards and things that I would recommend for protein powders. But again, there's lots out there. Just keep trying. I don't really know what the bad tummy would be linked to. Some people, it might be that it's a whey powder just doesn't sit well with them, particularly if mixing it with milk. So there's other things you could try, like different types of protein, for example, a pea protein or a soya protein. So you could try different actual protein powders themselves, but I think there's a lot of variation that you can have within those supplements. This ties back in with the breakfast one of, if you're really struggling for breakfast, is not something that I'm pushing, definitely not pushing it, but having a protein shake for breakfast, if it was versus nothing, would probably be better than nothing, if you catch my drift, particularly if you're doing a weight session in the morning, for example. So the question that often comes back off the back of this is, what supplements do I think work? So I tend to look at supplements as kind of a traffic light system: green, amber, red. Green, lots of research showing that they're safe and in a lot of contexts effective. Amber, where there's a bit of evidence breaking through, but it's not been shown enough to warrant a general recommendation. And then red, of they've either got no research or they've been shown that they don't work. So the green ones for me, particularly in an equine context, would probably be supplements that work. Caffeine as a stimulant. So pre-competition, pre-training, maybe as a bit of a boost, you could have a caffeine tablet, caffeine gum, or a coffee. Creatine, if you're trying to build muscle mass, or it can help with brain function. Again, I'm aware I'm whizzing through these, so get in touch if you want to talk supplements in a bit more depth. Nitrate, you might have heard of beetroot juice and stuff like that being good for endurance exercise. So that's another really great one. But then you've got protein powders, any of the carb gels and chews can be great. Some probiotic stuff, so stuff like having a Yakult as well can be useful. I'm aware I can't give all of the detail on all of these right here. And the final one I'll touch on is micronutrients as a supplement. Micronutrients, so vitamin and mineral supplements, will be beneficial if they're taking you from insufficient or deficient to sufficient. So if you're not having enough and having a supplement helps you get enough, then it will be beneficial. But if you're already having enough of a vitamin, just having a supplement on top of that isn't going to help. My example here, again, I know we're supposed to be coming into summer, but vitamin D. Vitamin D we synthesize through the sun. In the UK, we rarely see the sun. So we might be deficient in that, and therefore a vitamin D supplement might be useful. Again, I'll leave it there, but if you want to talk supplements, more than happy to have that chat on my contact details in the end. Where we're a little bit struck for time, but I want to talk through informed sport really quickly. So all supplements contain a risk, and I think this is directed predominantly at those of you that might be up for random spot checking by the UK Anti-Doping Agency or by World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, that when you have a supplement, there's a risk they might contain a banned substance. So it might be that through the manufacturing process, something has got into the product, or it might be, for example, dodgy protein powders that you might just Donkey Kong 3000 off of eBay. They sometimes might put in something like a steroid so that when you take it, you get absolutely massive, and then you review the product and say it's really good, and then everyone else wants to buy it. Crude example, but it's out there. Now, what you can do with informed sport, so you might want to start searching informed sport if you've got a phone or something, or you've got your laptop. You can start checking. Informed sport, you can check your supplements to see if they have been tested. So I've got here just a supplement pack. Now, normally, where you find, I don't know how clear it will be for you, but you find the best before date, and you can then find a batch number. So you'll see there it says batch number, and on it you've got this, in this case, the L number. Now, any of these supplements you've got, there will be a batch number on it somewhere. Now, this is the bit, Jenny, where I might ask you to confirm whether you can see. If I pull, hang on. Jenny, are you able to see the website?
Yes. What, informed sport?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So there's a few things you can do with informed sport. First one is actually to search for products that are up there. So if you're stuck and you want to find some protein, you could just type protein in there, as you can see in my last search. But what you can do is also search the batch number. So I've got the batch number from my product. I can search it. I know that it was a Maxi Muscle whey concentrate. And again, I don't recommend this product because I think it tastes of grit, ironically. But I know it's a strawberry, and I know the number. I've already searched this, so I can cheat. You just got to check through the, on the left-hand side here, you've got the batch IDs, and then you've got the test date. So I know that I had the strawberry L200002, which is, if you can see the highlight in that one there. So now I've done this, I know that this product here, and you can see the logo on there, but you've still got to check that this product here has been batch tested, which means the company of Informed Sport have taken this batch, they ran a test on it, and it doesn't contain, or there's in the batch that they tested, it didn't contain any banned products. So if you're liable to testing, you 100% have to be doing this with all of your products. And again, I'm more than happy to help you out after the session. And I think even if you're not, it might just be worth checking to see. But there's lots you can do with this. You can find products on here. When you're buying online, they will normally have the logo there, but you can always contact these companies and just say, I'm an athlete that's liable for testing. Can you make sure you get me some batch tested products? And in my experience, all of the companies have been really, really good with that. But just for relevance, a study in 2004, I know it's a bit old and times have changed, but it took 634 supplements, just kind of off of online shops and from shelves, and they tested them, and 14.8% of those contained some banned products or products that weren't declared on the label. So supplements are something you've got to be very careful with. And again, I'm aware I've tried to cover the whole of anti-doping in about 4 minutes, but there's a website that you can use. Just type in Form Sport and you can get searching of any batch numbers that you've got in your products. So the final few questions are just quick fire. So nutrition, daytime eating, when you don't like a big breakfast and a big lunch kills energy, I would absolutely be looking for a snack approach through there, particularly lunchtime, making sure you got some protein in there. But through the morning, anything that you can get in would be good. Might even be that it's just a coffee for some caffeine, but can you pair it with a biscuit? Can you get a piece of fruit in? Could you maybe even have a fruit juice in there? Just a little bit of snacking to keep those energy needs a little bit higher. Have a smaller lunch. So it might be that you have half a tin of, you've got bowl protein soups and stuff like that now, half a tin of that with a bread roll. It doesn't have to be big. And I think that ties in with that point of, don't like to feel full when riding, what should I do? Try and avoid feeling full. But seriously, consider looking at snacking. Don't think that you have to have a full meal all the time. Don't think you have to be having these arbitrary rules of 3 meals a day. It is about finding what works for you. So if a snack approach works, do that, but just make sure those snacks are intentional, and it's not just snacking on crisps and random chocolate and stuff that we tend to snack on, I think, if we're all honest. And it's actually intentionally, this snack is a piece of fruit so I can get some carbs in. This snack is 2 boiled eggs so I can get my protein in, and just be intentional with that. And I think with the riding, particularly when you come to a competition weekend, consider your fueling strategy could start the day before. So the evening before the evening before an event, have a large carbohydrate meal, like a big bowl of pasta, as your evening meal then, and try and get your predominant fueling done the night before, so that on the morning or on the day, you don't have to feel full, because you know you've already topped those stores up the day before. How to balance getting enough energy for competition, but not gaining weight. Again, I think it's that rolling tally, the weekly tally of, it might be during the week your energy demands are slightly lower. And then if you've got a weekend competition and you're riding multiple events, that your energy demands are a lot higher. It's just making sure that weekly average is there. So I find, again, competition, a lot of the barriers are around preparation and food availability in the equine world. So how much can you continue to cook for yourself if you've got your own facilities? How much can you pack and take with you? How much can you stay away from the kind of burger vans and pre-prepped food that we often stay there? I think sticking to the fundamental principles of what I've said on a day-to-day basis still applies for competition. And again, don't want to say avoid, but just acknowledging any celebratory consumption of calories through alcohol, takeaways, going and eating out, all of those things. Great, fill your boots, but just be aware so you're not in that situation of, I don't get why I'm not losing weight, or I don't understand why I'm gaining weight. Just have an awareness. Final question, where I'm going through these really quickly. Managing menopause and weight change. I will put my hands up here. I'm not an expert in menopause, and to be honest, I don't think there's a lot in the way of sports nutrition, menopause and weight change and equine that all sits together. But from the experience I do have, the changes can be, again, very individualized in the magnitude of how big they are and the direction of, you might see some positive changes to outputs and you might see some negative changes. I think the fundamentals are to stick to the fundamental things I've taught you. For example, you'll find a lot of the reading around menopause is around ensuring that you've got your protein spacing and maximizing protein. Your ability to build muscle mass and accrue muscle mass might be reduced, and you're at an age where sarcopenia begins to come into it, which is where you start losing muscle mass. So ensuring that your protein intake on a day-to-day basis is there, ensuring that hydration is tip top, and ensuring that your nutrient density is there. Lots of fruits and veg to ensure your micronutrients are high. The other one there is around insulin resistance and carbohydrate intake is, again, the fundamentals are you should be doing it anyway, but really prioritizing complex carbohydrates. So your whole grains, your brown breads, brown rice, all of those sorts of things need to become really fundamental. With regards to weight change, I think you can expect to gain some weight. I think it's a process that if you go into expecting to gain some weight is probably a better starting point and a better attitude to begin with. But I think performance is primary for me. So whilst the weight change might occur and it might be frustrating, what's happening with performance? Are you still performing is fundamental. So you might find that the amount of calories that you need might drop because your BMR, for example, might, and again, the data's still out on this, might drop, but the fundamentals, I know it's might not be what you wanted to hear, but the fundamentals are still there of energy balance, get your protein in, make sure you're fueling and have that nutrient density. So I'm aware that I've run over a little bit, so I'll stop here quickly and just see if anyone's got any questions. Hi, Jenny.
Thank you, James. I just wanted to add on to that last bit because I was doing a little bit of research as well with the menopause, just to try and make sure that we had a dual team approach. And you said everything I would say. You know, like the research is inconclusive and early at best, but it does appear, like you said, basal metabolic rate does seem to lower a little bit, mostly because most people's activity, not all, most people's activity starts to decline as they age, and you get the natural muscle loss. Those two things together mean that you have less active muscle mass, if you like, so you need less calories essentially. And when you've spent 30-40 years getting used to eating a certain way, it's actually very hard to think, I need 200 less calories a day now. So there's kind of that mental bit. And then also that's why I really encourage a lot of strength training for women that are perimenopausal, menopausal, because it helps keep your active muscle tissue high, and therefore you can continue to burn calories. And potentially that 200 calories, we're talking like, not, these numbers are really crude, by the way, they're kind of, you know, like James keeps saying, it's very individualized, but those calories that you lose, you kind of make up with that extra muscle mass. But it's very difficult, it doesn't just appear overnight, so it's a long game process, and it is frustrating. And I haven't gone through it myself yet, but have watched lots of people, and it's not the easiest time. I appreciate that. Sorry, Tracy, go on.
I think it's also the unfortunately it often couples in with the fact that you don't sleep very well. So
yeah, and then
you're coming into the day in a so it's complicated. It's like having owned a certain car all your life that you drove and you put fuel in and you knew exactly how to get it surfaced and what to put in it, and suddenly you wake up one day and you've been given a Land Rover Defender and you haven't got a clue what to do.
Yeah, and it's something I'm quite interested in, because I think if you can educate people before and during perimenopause, you kind of offset the shock a little bit. But I definitely think that, like James said, I think it's also about reflecting our mindset a little bit and coming back to the performance and really trying to go into it.
I like that. That was a really good that was a really good piece of advice. And actually that level of acceptance is like actually
sometimes it's that permission to allow yourself to change, like allow yourself to with the next stage and have good performance in the next stage of life, rather than, you know,
I don't want to go back, I've got to go forward.
To appreciate, it's easy to say that when I'm not there, but I think it's something that I'm really, really conscious of.
Just
myself.
need to buy a bigger pair of droppers, just got to get on with it, really.
That's
clearly the answer.
I think you can maintain, but I think trying to be back where we, you know, I think that's kind of that mindset that we need to get to. But I'm going to also
Thank
stop
you.
there because it's something that we can definitely continue to chat about and explore. I'm just aware that my thing's flashed, so I think we've probably got 4 or so
I think
minutes.
we've got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I will just quickly say to
Thank
anyone
you
that's
for that.
listening, my contact details are there, email, number, and my Instagram handle that I run my nutrition side off of. Please feel free to get in touch with any questions. I do offer one-to-one support, so if you do want to inquire about that, again, please feel free. But answering questions and that, I enjoy that sort of thing, and that's obviously free of charge. So please feel free to get in touch, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone watching this live and on the recording. Really value any feedback you've got, and do get in touch with James or me if you want me to contact James on your behalf. That'll be great. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.